So here is my newly acquired TL Audio M3 tube tracker mixer. 8 channel, 8:2 stereo mixer, 2 aux sends, 4 bands of EQ, high and low shelves and sweepable, high and low mids, bunch of options for input selection, line of mic, phase, a high pass filter, and then you can switch the EQ in and out, and mutes, pre-fade listen, solos on each channel, and got the master section here with returns from each of the aux sends. Digital output, I'll show you the slot for that a bit later. Some monitoring down here, headphone output for monitor. I bought the tube tracker from a couple of guys at Coda Studios in south of England, down near Bournemouth. They'd had it in their studio for a few years, but they hadn't actually used it very much of late. Bought it off them on Reverb for about £1,000. I was there on holiday with the family, brought it back as extra checked-in luggage. We survived the trip, no problems. But once I'd powered it up, and it powered it up perfectly fine, ran a couple of test tones through each of the channel strips, noticed that there was a fair bit of crackle on some of the channels. Some of the channels were cutting in and out depending on what I was connected to, what I was doing. There's the power supply down there. I didn't realise that was separate, and that's a beast in and of itself. So I think the best thing to do is probably just to pull it apart, give it a bit of deoxit on all of the switches and all of the pots, and see if that gives us any improvements. Hybrid valve and transistor architecture on this thing. So it's got an op-amp input for the input gain section. Then there is a tube after that. So you've actually run the thing through a little bit of silicon transistor amplifier stages before you do hit the valves. And one valve works across 2 channels. So there's a total of 5 valves in this thing. So two per channel. And then there's 1 valve on the stereo bus, output bus. Post schematics and stuff in a link in the bottom, and also the service manual. And I put this video together just to document how I have taken this thing apart, and all I've done is take the back cover off just to apply the deoxit and give the whole thing a bit of a clean up. I'd read an online forum and DIY group saying what a pain in the ass it is to pull this thing apart in order to do any kind of repairs and maintenance. One of the bits of advice I'd see in there is absolutely do not remove the front cover, which I can understand now that I've taken it apart. Much easier to come in via the back, and if you did need to remove individual channel strips, go in from the back, remove individual channel strips, which would require you to remove all the pot covers, which is not that easy. So to start off with, flip the unit onto its front. So faders and pots down onto a soft surface. I've just got an old bed sheet on top of my kitchen table here, just so you don't scratch the surface and you don't scratch your pots and your faders. So all of the weight of the unit is actually sitting on the pots and faders, which is a small concern. You can see all the inputs at the back here, mic and line inputs, inserts, direct outs, awesome, which can be between pro and semi-pro levels, +4, -10 dB. Various aux outs, sends and returns, monitor outputs, a link for having multiple units together. You can see where the back panel doesn't nicely align to the trim pots for calibration. So when the calibration needs to be done, it'll need to come apart again. I'm not going to calibrate that now. I wouldn't bother unless I was going to change the tubes. Oh, also note, the little cover plate here for where you can add in the DO-2, I think it is, DO-1, digital output card where you can have AES, SPDIF, and Toslink outputs. Start by removing these pan head screws, 1, 2, and 3 from the front, and another 3 at the back. Also removing these countersunk screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 on either side. You need to remove every single one of these washers and nuts for the TRS jacks. I'm putting one back on. There's a few of them. They all need to come off. And then also the little pan head screws that secure the XLR connectors in place. Remove all of those as well. There's a bunch of them. Make sure that you unscrew the cable gland. Just pull it back a little bit on the cable like this, just to keep it out of the way. So remove the back cover. First of all, lift up the side opposite the power cord, and then bend out the side cover, this side, enough so that you can then just slip the whole thing out. So the sides will pull away just a little bit, enough so that it will release the whole cover. But obviously that just goes back in the same place in reverse. So here's an actual application of the deoxit to all of the input gain pots. Quick squirt into each of the pots. We'll do every single pot on this mixer. Come around to the front. It's going to run through the whole of the movement of that pot, front to back a few times, just to get the deoxit in there. You can really feel that starting to loosen up. Some of these pots are very, very... So apply deoxit to all of the switches on each channel strip. These seem to be the most noisy and problematic. Actually audio cutting out and not working in some instances till I played around with some of those switches. And then a reasonable amount of deoxit to the fader strip as well, and then just run the fader up and down so that it sort of liberally applies that deoxit to the tracks in the fader. So applied a fair bit of deoxit to all the XLR connectors and the TRS connectors. And then just did a repeated action of the connector in and out on each one, just to get that deoxit in there, moving around across the whole of the contact surface inside. Across the top here you can see the valves. One valve serves 2 channels, and then we've got a 5th which does the stereo master bus. Cabling in, coming in here for the power supply. There's a plus or minus 22 volt lines, 70 volts, and then 200 volts for the heater plates on the valves.